Good morning, folks. I'm going to give it just one more minute, see if anybody else is going to join us, and we'll get started, okay? All right, folks, good morning. This is Friday, December 8th. I can't believe we're already full week into December, and just seems like the end of the year is flying by, and I'm a little bit under the weather, so I hope everyone can hear me okay. I've got my water, my cough drop, and my tissues right by me, so hopefully I don't have to mute myself for a coughing fit. I just want to go ahead and get us right into things. So today's first Friday is going to be on planning, reporting, evaluation, and impacts. I thought this would be a good topic to have since I'm sure everyone has got high on their list of things they need to get done before the end of the year is getting all their reporting in. So I also wanted to have us go and talk a little bit about some of the evaluation work that some of our colleagues have been doing. Hopefully it'll give you some good ideas of things that you can do in 2018, and then show how we're sharing those impacts, both through impact statements and infographics, and then also getting them turned into stories and getting them out there to the wider public. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to first of all go over to my PowerPoint and just remind everyone of our reporting deadlines. So by the end of the year, and hopefully you're doing this really by December 22nd so you can enjoy your holiday break, you need to have all of your outputs in for the year. For those folks who are 100% full-time extension, that means by the time you get done putting your all of your outputs in, that should be about 200 days. Remember, we planned for 182, but that's considering about 80% of your time. So in reality, you've probably gone more than that. I think I'll be about 205 by the time I get done. If you're not 100% full-time extension, you have to do the math to figure out your target number, but try to make sure you're at least at 182. We also want to see that everyone is trying to put in indicator data. So that's the knowledge gained, number of people who've learned something, number of people who've adopted a new practice. We've had hit or miss with people putting that kind of information in. So I'd really like to see that, if you've done any sort of evaluation, surveys of your programs, that you take that information and then you aggregate it and put it into the system. And then everyone should be tagged in at least 3 impact statements. Hopefully you're writing at least one of them about something that you've done and you've been involved with. Hopefully one of those has some of that indicator data in it. And then one can just be something that maybe someone else has tagged you in. And 2, I know some of the groups have gotten together and written these as teams, and that's great, and that's exactly what we want you to do. And then the cost recovery team, this has been in the Directors Weekly last week, and it'll be in there again this week. They want to start trying to collect information about the in-kind services that we get. So, or it might be that our partners are actually putting up money for some of our programs too. So they've asked that we add a 4th section to our impact reports. So I was gonna, oops, wrong one. So Tracy Wooden shared this as an example. This is from the Equine Annie's project that they've recently done, where she added a section called recognition. So it's of your sponsors, in-kind contributors, or partners. So she's added the organizations, the names of the people, and then what they contributed to that program. And so this is a way for them to really show how we're leveraging resources and how we can't do what we do without the support of our partners. So if everyone can try to include this, that would be really great. It's going to help the cost recovery team start to get at that information better. They've talked about having other ways of reporting that information to, maybe also in the planning and reporting system, but I think I'm the kink in that chain because I need to do some research on how to add some of those drop-down lists and things like that. But that might be coming in the future too. So I wanted to go over that. And then as far as planning goes, just yesterday, I finally got all of the changes made to our group plans. They've been rolled over for 2018, and I did make some tweaks. First of all, if you recall, last year we added an outcome in all of our program areas for policy, system, and environmental changes. And this was something that Nancy Mears has kind of started to spearhead for us. She had said after I put that together and rolled out the plans that the way I had worded the indicators was to count, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one again. It was to count organizations. And she said really she's more interested in the number of people impacted by a policy, system, or environmental change at that organization. And so we tweaked the wording of those indicators. If you've already got these in your plans, you don't need to make any changes. You'll just notice that the wording is a little bit different, so that we'll be counting people and not organizations in 2018. In addition, Sarah Burkhall had reached out to me and said some of the work that she's doing on health advocacy is not reflected in our plan, and asked that I add new indicators, which really meant I added new outcomes with indicators associated in the nutrition and health promotion plan. So I see we had one, I don't know where it went. I just saw that we had a comment and I've lost it on my screen. Here we go. Okay, thank you, Nancy, you're welcome. And then also with the Robert Wood Johnson partnership work that is going on, and having Gina Christ and others working on that, that program has their own logic model, and I was sent that, and I scoured through it and pulled out some of the culture of health and community health outcomes and indicators in that. So I've added them in here as well. So if you're working on that or associated with that in any way, you'll want to go ahead and look at this. So again, this is all in the nutrition and health plan area. This is going to be attached to the DW this week, and we'll also get it up on the staff resources page. Then one of the, I'll remind everyone that our plans, we ask that you have them rolled over and submitted by January 15th for your supervisor to review. So it'll give you about 2 weeks when we get back. If you need more time, let me know. If you don't know how to get some of these changes added to your individual plan, let me know. One of the other things that we're going to ask everyone to do, and this is for some of the civil rights work that we're doing, trying to make sure all of our civil rights folders are really in good shape, because we're anticipating that at some point in time we'll be audited. We want everyone to include the special intentions that they plan to do to reach underserved audiences. Now there's a box that says exactly this already in the form, and I've created a tip sheet for how to do that. So again, this tip sheet is going to be attached to the Director's Weekly. We'll get it on the staff resources page. But basically, you go into the same area when you edit your inputs where you adjust your time. So if in one program area you spent 80 days last year, this year you're only going to spend 70 days. This is where you would go to adjust those numbers. But once you're in there, you scroll to the bottom of the page and this box is already existing right there. So this may be, maybe you're going to advertise in on a Spanish radio website, maybe, or a Spanish radio site. Maybe you're going to, if you typically have a male audience, maybe you're going to go and try to interact with the Women in Ag conference. So this is something that's going to be a topic of some of our First Fridays later into the year. Jennifer Daniels in February is going to be presenting on how to recruit diverse applicants and participants. And so if this is something, if you learned something from that webinar in February, we'll open your plan up so you can adjust that in this box afterwards. And I'll just say that there is a little bit of feedback that I'm hearing. So if you guys aren't speaking, you're getting ready to speak, go ahead and please mute your microphones. And then I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the people who are going to be doing some sharing with us on the evaluation work that they've done. We really want to get at, we're asking for you to put the indicator data of what people have learned and the skills they've gained and what they plan to do into the system. Those are those short-term learning outcomes. And then we have the adoption outcomes too. But really we want to see over the long term trying to build things up to those conditional changes. So the social, environmental, and economic impacts that we're having. And those are harder to get to and harder to measure. We wanted to hear what some of the folks within our programs are doing now, how they're doing evaluation, and then start thinking about if we're not there yet, how do we go and build up to that higher level? So we're going to hear from Sue Barden to talk about the HORT program. I had invited Amy Schober to talk about the nutrient management, but I really didn't leave us any time for question and answer, and I felt like it was going to be a little too rushed. So I asked Amy if she wouldn't mind if I dropped her off, and she said that was okay, so thank you, Amy. She does have, she was one of the first programs that we did create, one of those nicer infographics and impact statements that's on our website. There are 4 there right now, and there'll be 11 by the end of the year. We have a bunch that should be up any day now. So please go look at Amy. She said if you have questions, if you want to learn from her how she did what she did, please reach out to her. She's very willing to have those conversations. Then we're going to go to Kathleen and Kimmy to talk about some of the FCS evaluation work that they've done, Lindsay Hughes to talk about 4-H, and then I'm going to share an impact statement that Dr. Rogers recently put together for President Asanis about all of cooperative extension, so where she's really trying to get at some of those high-level impacts. And then I'm going to turn it over to Adam Thomas to talk to us about how he's taken these things and then turned them into stories that have been picked up by national media. So Sue, I'm going to stop sharing and you can go ahead and take control.
Okay. All right, there. Does that show up? All right, great. So I want to talk about some evaluation we've done of the Master Gardener program. And this is work that the whole team worked on together. My daughter, Emily Barton, is a graduate student at the University of Virginia, and she helped us with this project. We did 2 different projects. One, evaluating the video web conferencing we used in Master Gardener training in the fall of 2015. And then more recently, we looked at Master Gardener volunteer satisfaction in the spring of 2017. This graphic I have up here is the volunteer satisfaction index that we used for that study, and I'll talk about that more a little bit later. So for the training that we did, or the evaluation of our fall 2015 training, we had the opportunity to use distance education for the first time in a big way in Master Gardener training. We trained Newcastle County, Kent County, and Sussex County all at the same time. And there were 11 sessions where instructors gave one session to one cohort live, and then the opposite cohort received it remotely, and then it flip-flopped. So those were good pairs that we could use for comparison. Cohort A was our Newcastle County Master Gardeners. There were 13 of them. They were remote for 6 sessions. We'll call that Site 1. Cohort B were Kent and Sussex together, and they were trained at 2 different sites, the Kent County office and the Sussex County office. They were remote for 5 sessions, and there were 17 of them. And this is the bandwidth at each of these sites, and that will come back into play a little bit later. We'll talk about that. So most of you know that the remote experience is you see the image on the PowerPoint up on the screen, and then you have a small box where you see the instructor, in this case Gordon's, down in the bottom right hand of the screen. So our research questions, the purpose of this was we wanted to make sure that Master Gardeners received high quality training and we were able to maintain our high 5-year retention rate. 84% is one of the highest of all of those that we researched across the country. So we're proud of that and we want to keep it. So our research questions were, what differences, if any, exist between Master Gardener trainees learning when they receive instruction via face-to-face versus video web conferencing, remote delivery, and then how do those Master Gardener trainees perceive training when video web conferencing is used? So how much do they learn, and then how do they perceive the training experience? So we started with a pre-training survey. We looked at gardening frequency of Master Gardeners, and we looked at their technology comfort, which is relatively high, 25.7 out of 32. Then we developed a set of questions to measure how much Master Gardeners had learned from each of the sessions. There were 2 open-ended questions per session. We pre-tested these quite a bit. And we ended up coming up with those 2 questions. An example of a question was, you are on the tree committee for your community, which is planning a large tree planting project. Someone suggested using bare root trees for the project. Is that a good idea? Why or why not? So these were application-oriented questions. They were not recall-oriented questions. We had 2 coders who coded responses, and they came to consensus on their coding, and then we analyzed that data. Then we did a post-training survey where we asked Master Gardeners about their perceptions of the educational experience and their perceptions of the experience using technology. So if we look at some of the data, what we see is that most of the sessions were very similar between face-to-face and remote. So the ones that I've highlighted are almost exactly the same as far as the learning that occurred between face-to-face and remote training. If we look at the individual cohorts, we saw no statistical differences between remote and face-to-face, but when we combine them and we look at this overall number, there is a statistical difference, even though that difference is fairly low. It's 1/10, but it is statistically significant. When we delve into that further, we find out that the differences occurred at Site 2 in 2 of the sessions. And if you remember, the Site 2 Kent County office has much less bandwidth than the Newcastle County office or the Research and Education Center. And we believe that it was this lack of technology that made it more difficult for those participants when they were remote in Site 2. So then that post-training survey, we looked at people's perceptions. And if we look at the educational quality, it's all very high. But if we look at the functionality, the technical functionality, something that's called media naturalness in the education realm, it's relatively low. So media naturalness refers to things like being in the same place, having the education occur at the same time, hearing the speech clearly, being able to see instructors' body language and facial expressions. And all of these things contribute to that sense of, I'm right there with the instructor. So the technology was actually perceived to be fairly low. That experience of media naturalness wasn't really there for many of the Master Gardeners when they were trained using Zoom. So what's the take-home message from this? We want to make sure that the more we innovate technologically, we still have as high quality a training as we possibly can. In order to have that happen, we need to make sure that instructors are trained on how to use Zoom, because you're teaching differently when you're teaching remote than when you're live. And most importantly, we want to make sure that we actually have the infrastructure in place to support this kind of remote delivery. And then we want to continue to monitor and evaluate And we had these next steps included, which we'll follow up with in the next study. So this first study resulted in a paper that was published in Hort Technology. And then in this past spring, we looked at Master Gardener volunteer satisfaction, getting at this idea of retention. But we also looked at demographics of Master Gardeners, the activities they participate in, their satisfaction using the Volunteer Satisfaction Index. We looked at retention and connection, and then training and volunteer effectiveness. The Volunteer Satisfaction Index was developed by Galindo Kuhn. It's something that anybody can use, although it can be expensive depending on what you're using it for. Since Emily is a graduate student, we were able to use this free of charge. This Volunteer Satisfaction Index looks at participation, efficacy, organizational support, empowerment, and group integration. So those are the 4 areas that questions address. So, the belief that volunteer efforts will be successful and benefit others, educational and emotional resources, feeling that volunteers can work without direct supervision, and then sort of the social aspects of volunteering in a group. And this infographic that Emily put together shows some of the data from our survey. We're still working on a little bit of this data and its interpretation. There was an average of 10 years of Master Gardener service, and this 2017 study looked at all Master Gardeners that have been trained, all current Master Gardeners. On average, they are gardening 4 times a week, and they're involved in 7 different volunteer activities. So our Master Gardeners are pretty active. When we look at the satisfaction index, it makes us feel pretty good because we got a 6 out of 7. So that's really high. Master Gardeners are very satisfied in Delaware. But when we drill down a little bit and look at this participation efficacy, it's high, but the part of it that was lowest were Master Gardeners' perception of their ability to affect change. So that might be something that we could work on. We should be conducting evaluations of individual programs that Master Gardeners do and make sure Master Gardeners see those results. More emphasis on Master Gardener success stories so that they have more of a perception of their ability to affect change. I think they are affecting change with their programming. We just need to communicate to them that they are actually doing that. As far as retention, 85% of our Master Gardeners say that they will remain within the next year, and 71 say they will almost certainly remain within the next 3 years. So that's good retention. Finally, just to finish up, we looked at connection to sponsoring agency, and not surprisingly, Kent and Sussex are more connected to Del State than Newcastle is. And all Master Gardeners feel more connected to Delaware Cooperative Extension than either University of Delaware or Del State. So their real connection is with Cooperative Extension, which is interesting to discover. Finally, when we look at knowledge acquisition, this survey shows us that the original training contributes the most to Master Gardeners' general knowledge and their perception of feeling like they know something about the subject matter that they're going to be covering. But advanced training and volunteer experience contribute more to their confidence in their ability to teach and find answers to the questions. So what this tells us as Master Gardener coordinators is that we need to obviously include both of these, that the original training gets them that feeling of, I've got general knowledge that I need, but it's the advanced training and the volunteer experience that give them the confidence to go out and do the volunteer work. So that's a summary of what we found. We are continuing to pull information out of this second study. Carrie and Tracy and Megan are going to be reporting on this at the next Master Gardener Coordinators Conference. We plan to put another paper in probably Hort Technology about the results of this study. So thanks. And I need to stop sharing.
Thank you, Sue. That was great. Are there any questions for Sue? That was really good, and I'm glad to see you were able to get that work into publication form. And I made a note to myself, I'm giving a presentation to the Kent Master Gardener group in January, and I'll make sure I try to say something about their ability to affect change and the climate change arena that I'm going to be talking about. So it's a
Great.
good note to have. Thank you. And I'm sorry the Kent County office has or had a lower bandwidth. I know that there was supposed to have been work done, and I'm not sure if that has ever been changed.
Well,
But
hopefully this study provides a little more incentive and justification for spending money on Kent County to get the technology up to snuff.
Here, here. Thank you. Send me a copy of that. Okay, so questions. Well, Nancy says that's awesome. Anybody else want to unmute or chat a question to Sue? I know she needs to hop in the car and get down here for the Ag In service.
So Jen, I just want to say that for the FCS team, I see great parallels in what that information gathered from the Master Gardener training could help us with our Master Food Educator training. And our Master Food Educator training and continuing advanced trainings too. That's very helpful.
Right, and I would imagine with 4-H volunteers too,
right.
Having them feel, wanting to know what their perceptions are and their ability to change and influence. So that's something that we can maybe talk as a group of people who work with volunteers.
Yep.
All right, well, I think Kathleen,
Okay.
You guys are unmuted and I don't see questions. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you now. Thanks, Sue, and I'll see you in person in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Jen. I was tasked with talking to you all about family and consumer science evaluations, and I wanted to just give you a general overview of the various different types of evaluations we do, some of the particular programs that we evaluate a little bit differently. But basically, we have programs that are one-time programs, and we have programs that are series of programs. And the one-time programs are in the areas of nutrition, health, food safety, and then one-time programs in financial literacy, health insurance literacy. And between those 5 topic areas, we have about 34 programs that we're evaluating. So the challenge is finding common tools that'll work to evaluate all those programs so that we can congeal that together as a team and create impact reports at the end of the year. So our one-time programs are your typical programs where we do a post-program survey, and we're just basically evaluating what the participants learn, if they plan to do things differently, what they're planning to use from the program that they've participated in. The other thing that we ask them that's very helpful is we ask them what other topic areas they would like to see programming in. And this is especially pertinent when it comes to the area of nutrition and health, because people hear things on the news, they hear current events and current topics, and we can gather information from that question and figure out, is this something that we really need to pursue, and be sure we're providing the public with research-based information. And oftentimes we have dietetic interns that can then do some really great research-based programs from that information that we gather on those evaluations. Those one-time program evaluations use a Likert scale, basically going from strongly disagree to strongly agree. But we found that the public sometimes, they'll have wonderful comments about how fabulous the program is, but they inadvertently fill out the Likert scale in the wrong direction because they really didn't read the heading correctly. So one of the tools that I noticed that Cheryl has put on her evaluations, and we need to be doing this statewide, is a smiley face for strongly agree and a frowny face for strongly disagree. So it gives them another tool to use, because literacy sometimes too can be a challenge with people. The other thing we do with those is we actually evaluate the presenter, have them have an opportunity to evaluate if the presenter did a good job. One of our one-time programs that has another tool is our ServSafe classes. So we have a national certification exam that people take at the end of the day. And what we found is oftentimes people are not successful in passing the exam, but they still learn a lot in our class. So that's why we give them the food safety survey, as well as having the test be an indication of their success in learning what they need to learn. The health insurance and financial areas, there's one-time programs with that. Knowledge and confidence before and after the program are measured, but we're really just measuring that short-term behavior change on those. So some of our classes that are a series or a longer session, we do follow-up programs to see follow-up programs or follow-up evaluations to see longer-term behavior change. For example, Dining with Diabetes, we have a reunion 3 months after the class and can see if people are putting into practice, if they're meeting the goals that they set for that program. And some of the financial programs, Maria has sent out post-program surveys several months later to see if people are really changing behavior in the long term. Of course, anybody that's done that understands that oftentimes you might have 50 people in a class, but you might get 8 surveys back 6 or 8 months later. And that's what's really challenging, is to really be able to follow up with the people in an efficient way with all the rest of the things we're trying to do. So let me just talk a little more specifically about our Dining with Diabetes program. We are part of a national effort. Many states across the country are using the same curriculum for Dining with Diabetes. So we're trying to gather national data. So in doing that, we are all using the same evaluation tool across the country. And Kimmy and Cheryl and I have felt very challenged with that evaluation tool, because sometimes the material that you're teaching doesn't necessarily measure, is not in sync with what that evaluation tool is. And there's a little frustration in there, in that we don't want to massage it too much and make it Delaware, because we want to be able to have that data be able to be used nationally for impacts. Kimmy's going to talk a little bit more about another piece of that that deals with that and helps us with that. But we are fortunate, and anybody that works with volunteers, this is a great way to have your volunteers help you. We are fortunate to have 2 volunteers who are master food educators who are evaluation specialists. They do this for a living, and they offer to create a format for us to enter our data and then evaluate our data at the end of the year, after pre, post, and reunion information has been put in. So just another idea on a way to use volunteers to help with getting that work done. They've been able to really key in on presenting beautiful infographics for us based on what's been done through the year. So as far as impact reports, we work as a team to put those together. We gather all the food safety data, we gather our one-time program data and put that together into impact reports. And it's a little bit tricky, because the food safety programs, just like anything else, they are concentrating on different audiences, so they might need different questions. So trying to make it a unified evaluation tool, we are still working on that as a team. I'm going to let Kimmy talk a little bit about this national survey for Dining with Diabetes, and a tool that the volunteers, our evaluation specialists or master educator volunteers, have suggested that we put in place to help capture some of the learning that's not captured on the Dining with Diabetes survey. So take it away, Kimmy.
Sure. So we were starting to find that our post-tests weren't reflecting the knowledge change that we know was happening because of comments we were getting, changes we were hearing them make, really positive things, and then their pre and post tests would have very similar answers. And so we were getting a little frustrated, because why is this? We know there's these changes. And so Kelly and James, our evaluation specialist volunteers, gave us this really neat tool called an instructor feedback survey. And so I'm really going to talk about the first 2 questions of that. And the first one is, based on your observation, can you estimate what percentage of participants fully learned the knowledge taught during the program period? And how do you make that estimate? And so we have lots of opportunities throughout our presentation or throughout the Dining with Diabetes class for participants to talk and to tell us what goals they made, what changes they've made, have they noticed any differences? And so that's a great time for us to really hear the changes they've made, hear new information they've learned. A lot of times we hear, oh, I'm paying attention to my portion sizes now, or I take so long in the grocery store now because I read every label before I buy it. And these are all really great things that aren't necessarily reflected in our pre and post tests. And so we take observation to that, as well as we do something from our facilitative learning program that we had in March. We do a parking lot. And so any big questions that come up or reoccurring questions or something people aren't getting, we grab a Post-it note, we throw it on the parking lot. And if it's a question I need to research, I try to get it done by the next week or at least by the end of the program. And if it's a question that I just want to make sure they understand before we completely end the program, we just check back in and say, hey, remember when you asked this? Do you understand that any better now? Does anybody else still need some clarification on that? So it's a really, really great way to see these knowledge changes without necessarily seeing it on the pre and post. And there's 3 more questions on about instructor feedback survey that I'm not really going to go into, but just the idea behind them, and I found them really useful for me, is they help you see where maybe those discrepancies in the presentation are to that pre-post, and how you can change the way you're presenting or change the material a little bit to help them understand those topics in the pre and post. And so it's really a nice tool to evaluate yourself as a presenter and the information you're presenting to see what changes you need to make to be more effective. And I really, really use that part a lot as well. And I think it's helped get the knowledge across a lot better. I think that's it. Anything else, Kathleen?
I think we're good. I think our time is up, probably.
We're doing great on time. So
Okay.
questions for Kathleen and Kimmy? Anybody want to?
And I know I wasn't able to capture everything we evaluate in that short time, but that's just basically a general overview.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. Thank you for sharing all of the different approaches and how you do the longer term follow-up with the programs that are in a series versus the one and done type. And also, I was going to just share with you, I gave you here's my evaluation.
Okay.
So good job. Anybody else got anything for Kathleen and Kimmy? All right. Thank you, ladies. Lindsay, we're going to go ahead and move over to you now with the 4-H side of things.
Hello, good morning. Okay, so I teach the Botfin Life Skills Program, which is a statewide drug prevention program. So on the screen, you'll see some information about the program, but I'm going to go in a little bit more depth about it. So the Botfin Life Skills Program is a free for Delaware students that are 8 to 14 years old. The comprehensive program provides adolescents and young teens with the confidence and skills necessary to successfully handle challenging situations. So they're prepared when somebody comes to them and wants to try and ask them to do drugs. It's developed by Dr. Gilbert J. Botfin, a leading prevention expert. It is backed by 30 scientific studies in recognition as a model program for array government agencies, including the U.S. Department of Education and the Center for Substance Abuse Prevention. There is the elementary and the middle school curriculum is what we currently use. The elementary curriculum, we use 8 elementary lessons, which are 30 to 45 minutes long. And the topics that we cover are self-esteem, advertising, social skills, decision-making, dealing with stress, smoking information, communication skills, and assertiveness. And then the middle school curriculum, we cover 14 lessons, which are 45 minutes to an hour long. So we cover the topics that the elementary has, but a little bit more in depth. And then we also cover the lessons of alcohol information, marijuana information, violence in the media, coping with anxiety, coping with anger, and then resolving conflicts. And then the program that we're running We actually have been running the program for 15 years. So over 15 years, we've been running the program, and it's been grant funded this whole entire time. We have to reach 300 youth, but most of the time we go well over that. As of right now, we have 630 youth, and that's not even towards the end of our grant cycle this year. For the evaluation portion of our grant, the first session, the students take an anonymous pre-test, and on the very last session, they also take the post-test, so we can compare them. The pre and the post-test are developed and evaluated by the National Health Promotion Associates. And at the end of the grant cycle, we match up the pre and the post-test for each individual student, and then we send them off to be evaluated for the entire state. So all Delaware comes back with all of the evaluations. The evaluations are completed for an elementary and then a middle school curriculum evaluation. So we get two evaluations back at the same time. The evaluation gets broken down into different categories when it comes back. Anti-smoking, anti-drug use, life skills, relaxation, social skills, advertising, and communication, as well as pro-smoking attitudes, pro-drinking attitudes, and drug refusal skills. So we get to see how their skills are for refusing to use drugs. And some of the results that we've found through the evaluation, and up on the screen is actually for 2016, but here's the results that I've captured right now for 2017. So 96% of students say they would say no when someone tries to get them to smoke a cigarette, to use cocaine or other drugs. So that was 96%. 93% of students said they would say no when someone tries to get them to drink beer, wine, or liquor. 93% of students said they would say no when someone tries to get them to smoke marijuana. And then 90% of students said they would say no when someone tries to get them to sniff glue, paint, gas, or other things to make them high. And then our last thing that we found was 91% of students indicated they learned there is something they can do besides go along with peer pressure. And that's actually one of the things we do with the students is assertiveness, how they can deal with peer pressure when it comes to them. So that's a little overview about the BOTFINS program. We have an overview that we're going to be working with the college evaluations. So I also wanted to do a little quick share about this. So we'll be working on the Delaware 4-H program. In the upcoming year, we will be working on the evaluation related to the 4-H youth and the college enrollment. So this is also ties into one of the top current priorities for the University of Delaware that makes efforts to make Delaware youth more enrolled into the university program. So we're actually in the early stages of developing this evaluation. We're in the process of developing questions that can be asked to our target audience to set a benchmark of how 4-H membership and involvement is playing a part in these youths enrolling into college and helping them to determine what course that they're going to follow when they get to college. So we'll be reaching out to the students of that have aged out of the 4-H program, so 19 and up, or maybe 19 to 22. We'll be reaching out to the students and asking them to see like how many of the students enrolled into college to determine what experiences or projects work in the 4-H might have contributed to their course of study. And then to inquire as what life skills they learned in 4-H that helped them to prepare for college, for their college experience as well. So we're in the early stages of this, but hopefully once we're completed this, we'll be happy to share the evaluations that we come through with that. Are there any questions?
Perfect. Questions for Lindsay. So I had one. Are you, the BOTFINS program, it's bigger than Delaware, or it's just in Delaware?
The BOTFINS program is a national, but we just teach it here in Delaware.
Okay. So do you have all of the questions you were asking, would you be willing or would you say no? I was curious, do you ever follow back up and say, well, have you ever done it? Or when was the last time you smoked marijuana or did cocaine? I mean, these type of things, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to say no, but then do you know they really do?
Right. Actually, at this point, part of the BOTFIN's curriculum, we don't have questionnaires that ask the after part. So we just do the pre and the post just to figure out the beforehand, I guess, and the
Okay.
after once they learn the lessons from us.
Michelle and I, we met with Steve Piquet and a couple of other people, and he was telling us about the Center for Drug and Health Studies, which I think is in the College of Sociology. And he said that they do some sort of youth risk behavior survey. And so maybe they have, are you linked up with them already? I was thinking of that when you were talking. And
I'm not linked up to them, but I've heard of them doing this survey before.
Yeah, we should see what kind of data they have, and if we can draw some conclusions like on impacts of what students are really doing, and see if it blends with what they say they would or would not do.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you. Other questions for Lindsay? Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and take the screen back over, and I'm going to show you a higher level impact report that Dr. Rogers has recently put together for President Asanas. I am sharing my screen, right? No, I'm not. There we go. Okay. So this is something that all of the colleges have been asked to have this type of impact data. She was asked to put something together for all of Extension, which is pretty challenging because we do work in a variety of topic areas. And so she's prepared this, and I think it is going to him very soon if it hasn't already. So she found by looking at our participant data that 1 out of every 10 Delaware citizens are interfacing with us in a face-to-face capacity annually. And then she went and found some, kind of broke this into 3 different categories. So for agriculture, it's a $9 billion ag economy in Delaware, and some of our programs have really had an impact both economically and environmentally. So, Amy, I bumped her from the program, but the second bullet here is something that came out of her impact statement. So by having people do nutrient management planning, she was able to estimate the tonnage of nitrogen and phosphorus that have been kept out of our water bodies statewide. For our healthcare costs that are 25% of the Delaware budget, she's been able to say that we help reduce those costs through some of our programs like Kathleen and Kimmy's, the FCS programs, Dining with Diabetes, the 4-H Health Rocks, and some of our other 4-H programs. And then also we have an impact on the economic and workforce development, which this is something that the president is tuned into. So she wanted to make sure she addressed that. And because people had to come through our ServSafe program, they had to go to a ServSafe program, 50% of those individuals come through the University of Delaware, and that's helping them stay in business and meet the state requirements. So I wanted to share this. I think we'll probably get it into a DW when I know that we have it in the final form, and think about these types of things. If you're not measuring these things yourselves, some of them we're maybe not able to in-house. We might have to go to other people or find other data sets to try to look at these larger impacts on economics, society, and the environment. But think about what you might want to do in the future, and if you have questions and ideas and thoughts, I really encourage everyone to discuss them in your program teams, and we'll get it up to a leadership team meeting to kind of figure out what kind of resources we might have available to help you with that. So with that, I think we're doing pretty good on time. Are there questions on that? Does anybody have a question for me on the higher level impact statement that she just put together? I should point out Dr. Rogers is in DC this week for the launch of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation meeting, and she's there with Gina and Sarah Burkhall. Okay, so Adam, I think you're on the line as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second, I do see. So Maria's pointing out workforce preparedness under farm, family, and individual resource management. We have some indicators that capture that. So that's a good point, Maria. Maybe if, I think there might still be time, because I think the meeting with the president got postponed. So If those are some indicators that you want us to try to pull out and get inserted into there that could help support that bullet, I think we still have time to do that. Okay, Adam, so why don't we go now the next level? So we do all this evaluation and impacts, and what's your side of the story?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Adam Thomas. I'm the interim communications director of the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. And what I've been doing is working with these impact statements and getting them turned into stories for UDaily, which is the university's online news source. A lot of people don't know that UDaily articles, they're not just internal, they also go external. OCM, that's the Office of Communications and Marketing, they have an external media relations team, and they push out stories through Eureka Alert if it's more scientific based, and Newswise if it's kind of more general, feel-good stories like that. So I've turned Nate Klaszewski's Misted Nursery story and Carrie Murphy's Urban Gardening impact statement. I turned them both into stories, and those stories were really 2 for 2 as far as generating excitement. Ag is America picked it up. Delmarva Morning Ag Clips picked it up. And that's really exciting because it shows that there is interest in these extension stories. Ag is America, they featured it on the homepage. It was next to places like Ohio State Extension, Cornell Cooperative Extension, a lot of the big players that we want to get featured with. And they also feature it on their social media pages. So Ag is America doesn't just run the story, they'll share it on their Facebook, they'll share it on their Twitter, which is really great. And internally, we have not only just the UDaily, but we share it on our Canner blog, we share it on the extension website, and then we have a Canner social media page. We have Facebook for Canner, Twitter for Canner, Instagram. We can share it on all of those. Cooperative Extension has all those. So we really have many platforms where we can get this information out. And I think UD in general is really focused on community engagement. It's going to be a big thing going forward. And I think Extension is really ahead of the curve on a lot of these stories. Just editing these impact statements, it's very impressive, the wide range and the big reach that Extension has to the Delaware community and beyond. And I think it's really just, for the urban gardening story, talking with someone like Gail Hermano, a master gardener, and telling her individual story and then inserting into there the larger impact that Extension is having, I think that's really successful. And I think it's something we can do to all program areas. So if you have any interest in having your impact statement turned into a story, please just let me know. My email is anthomas@udel.edu, and 302-831-6427 is my extension. So feel free to just reach out. And, I really love writing these stories, and I'd love to help spread the word about all the great work you guys are doing.
That's awesome, Adam. Do you have any sense for when a story gets picked up by Ag is America and it's on their website and they share it over their social media platforms? Do you have any sense for the total number of people that it then gets read by?
The best I could do is estimate it, and I can see, Ag is America, their Facebook page, I believe it's about 10,000 people like that page. So just judging by the engagement that they post on their Facebook page, I can kind of guesstimate that. And then we can also see the click-through rate, because when they post to Ag is America, they link to the Canner blog they have for these 2 stories. And so it shows that they're really engaging with our social media and our content, because I haven't actively pitched those stories out to those outlets. They've just organically picked them up on their own. But with UDaily, I would say just at a minimum, you're probably going to get around 250 readers just from that one outlet.
So I guess, is it appropriate, if the one story was that a Nathan Klaszewski one? So, he's now left, but he was in our planning and reporting system. So would it be appropriate for him to then kind of get that information working with you, and he can report that as indirect contacts? A story written on his research or work that he's doing?
Yeah, I would think so. I worked with him back when he was still here before he headed out. So, but yeah, I would imagine so.
Okay, so I want people to kind of hear that and think about that. So if you've had something that's been turned into a UDaily article, or it, even bigger, gets picked up by these other groups, these are, and this is indicator data that you can then, not indicator data, sorry, output data. You can get those contacts and put that in as a publication, and then you can put those indirect contacts down, and we can say that, you know, we're reaching these people through the written form. So anybody have questions for Adam? We're at 9:55, so we've got 5 minutes left. If anyone wants to use it, now's the time. I'm not seeing anybody unmute themselves or type anything. I think Michelle and Lindsay put on your email address in the chat box. And they've also added that 22,000 follow at Ag is America on Twitter. So that's a big number too. And then before we switched over to you, Maria had a follow-up comment about the workforce development side of things. She said that really, if anybody's doing some sort of staff professional development type of work, they should be in the risk development, the resource development plan area. I always kind of truncate that: family, individual, farm, resource management. And I don't think probably a lot of people are. I'm even just thinking of you know, Amy and Sydney and Tara with the nutrient management certification. People have to have that certification in order to be compliant with the nutrient management law. So if they're not in that, that's not an area we can say that, you know, you can't aggregate those indicators. So it's something for everyone to think about too, now that we're in rollover time. That's a place that you could add that area and those indicators into your plan now, and start reporting for that in 2018. So just my last few comments while I have you all here. Our January First Friday topic is going to very likely be on a needs assessment that we will be doing through 2018, just giving you some insight into that. And I also want to kind of set the stage for some of our February and March First Fridays, which will be on some of the civil rights topics. Talking about who's our audience, who's the population within our region. So just try to frame that a little bit for you so you can think about that some more. In February, Jennifer Daniels, who had done a First Friday for us before, she's going to be here and talk about recruiting a diverse applicant pool and participants. She has shared with me that if anyone has questions, send them to her in advance. So if you can send them to me by the end of the year, I will aggregate all the questions I get and we can forward them on to her, and she will incorporate answers to those questions in her presentation. So, you know, maybe the question is, what can they do to support us with recruiting diverse groups? Or where would we go to recruit a diverse group? Or what constitutes diverse for different programs? Let me know what your questions are. I will share them with her, and that will help her give us a really great and informative talk. And then in March, she will talk about managing diverse groups. So again, if you have questions on that, let me know and I can get them to her in advance. Maria is asking if we need to add a question on participant surveys, something on a scale of 1 to 5. Has the training increased your knowledge and skills to do your job more effectively? So that's a way to kind of get at if we're helping people in the workforce area. So that's a good comment, Maria. Thank you. I think every program group probably needs to think about that and consider that. So with that, last call for questions or comments. And if not, I hope you have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. And we'll see you in January. All right. Bye, guys.